Me too, I think. You eat some 7 birds right now? Nice. Do you usually? Or no? Not usually. Than me. Do you get it? The drip with EX is EPX. So New Year is just the same. Okay. I thought it was due today, but it's not apparently. Is it?
It is.
Oh. Oh, the 19th. But I guess it's not working. Good morning. Your Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday. Dude, everyone's saying Wednesday. I need to know what's going on. I'm trying to see this. What I wasn't trying to miss. I was thinking if I go on the coach on Thursday, I won't miss weeks. But then I'm like, wait, we're probably going to do something that day. But if we don't go. Something we're going today. So, I didn't think of that. I'm going Thursday. I'm going to test on Wednesday. In Cessna.
Bring out today. Chloe. Goes out today. Whitney. Aiden.
On Thursday, that's our test, right? This Thursday?
Correct.
I have my APES field trip,
Okay.
so would I be able to take it next week during advisory? Okay.
It'll probably need to be 2 days to make sure you have enough time. But
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Wait, this year or wait, last year? Wait, I don't know.
It's literally all the way.
Yeah, that's good though. That means it's healing. Like, good experience.
She's literally like talking and just like pulling random words. I'm so tired.
You wore
Are you
those?
up here or are you here? You wouldn't be in bed. What? Oh my god. Did you sign up? Don't be like
Be the opposite.
Are you, you're asleep during this?
Yes. I didn't even ask if you looked at
Wait, that's like so independent right It's like Grey's Anatomy, like that doesn't even look real.
Yeah, it was fake. Like, I was like,
Now, what I want to do is
What time to stay today?
that's a good question.
I just wanted to do it.
did you had to do the whole SR and ER.
I'm gonna do it. I got it.
Did you do it right? Okay, but 30 minutes is a long time for one application just to do that. I had to do that on the Common App for like 4 other schools, so why didn't they just do it? You know what I'm talking about?
You know, I'm gonna do it.
Are you going
All right, before we get started today, last time I saw you guys, I asked you to turn in 41 in the Google Classroom. And if you didn't do that, you could have done that for homework. And if you were unable to do that, your phone wasn't working, whatever, you can still get full points for it, but I need it in the basket with your name on it, please.
We did that one. That was the basic one.
Please stand if you are able and join me in the pledge. I allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and have a great day.
Okay, last chance for full points on number 41, if you did not put that in Google Classroom. Okay, I need to give you guys some directions about your handouts here because this is you need to put your name on here. Your name's not on here, and you need to take out your headphone. So we've got our test coming up on Thursday. Some of the handouts I printed out for you guys are going to be optional. So let's talk about those real quick. So I want to talk about the tests first, and then one of the handouts y'all picked up today, you should number is number 46. It was FRQ number 5 from the year 2000, and it has some implicit in there. And just good FRQ practice. FRQs are going to be the hardest part of this class moving forward. But the bulk of our time will be letting you ask questions from the test review and making sure you have that finished up, because that is the single most important document. The FRQ is optional, the number 46. I'm not going to take a homework grade on it. In fact, it's one of the linked ones on the review. I just printed it out for you. So if you finish with the test review and you've got some time for some extra practice, then I would suggest doing that. If you finish that in class and you want to know how you did, I do have the answers up here. Otherwise, you can just Google search CalAB 2000 FRQ5 and you can find the scoring guide pretty easily. I will ask you to check Google Classroom to see what needs to be turned in. That will be the Unit 3 review, number 45, is the one that will be required. And then the other two handouts you picked up are also going to be optional, but I will offer a homework grade on those if you do at least half of them. So the two other handouts you picked up make up 47. Those are a circuit over related rates, and just in my opinion, related rates vary so much in difficulty that that is probably a good use of your time as far as preparing for the test. I was kind of torn on even giving you the option to do that one this early in the year, because I kind of would like y'all to do it in like March when we start reviewing for the AP exam, just as a related relates reminder. But again, if you do at least half of that and put it in Google Classroom, I'll give you a homework grade, but you should definitely hang on to it because I'll probably ask you to finish it sometime second semester. So if you do it early, maybe it'll help out with the test a little bit too. And then finally, late work policy reminder with our test on Thursday. Remember, if there's any late work, anything that you have a 0 on, you can still get half credit on it, but you need to finish it and have it ready to turn in before we start the test. And if there was anything you got half credit on because you turned it in incomplete, you can finish it and get half of those points back. So, any question about our plan for today? Okay, so some information about the test. Just to be honest with you guys, the first two tests are kind of different in this class. First, limits. It's hard to make a whole test over limits without just giving the same question type multiple times. So that one's kind of unusual. And then our second test we did over derivatives. Like your AP exam, it'll have a question that strictly checks to see, can you do quotient rule? And there'll be a question that strictly says, can you do product rule? But more than anything, that stuff's kind of integrated in other stuff. So even the FRQ on the last test is not a very good representation of what the FRQs will look like on the AP exam. Now that you guys have a little bit more calculus under your belt, the rest of our tests generally have a pretty similar format. 9 multiple choice questions, 1 FRQ question, 1 or 2, just depending on the unit. Half the points come from the FRQs, half of them come from multiple choice. I think this is true of every test for the rest of the year except for one and the semester test. But the flip side is, the reason why I'm even addressing this is because typically this third test, when students work it, they'll think that they didn't do as well because it comes across as harder. The reason it comes across as harder is because it'll have more AP level questions on it than your first two tests did. But the flip side of that is that we do curve it a little bit differently. So I will share with you what the test curve usually is. Obviously, we're not obligated to provide this curve, but this is a pretty standard curve used based on whether they think you're prepared for a 4, 5, 3, 2, or 1 on the AP exam. So this is the one we often use. So you can miss 1 point, still get 100. If you get half the points, you can still get a 75. I don't think this should change how you study at all. I'm only pointing it out to you so that when you're taking the test, if it feels harder, it should come out about the same after the curve. The first two tests we don't do much of a curve on. We give a couple points here or there, but pretty much not much. Okay, any questions about that? Again, I can't promise we're even going to use this curve on the next one. We have to agree on that, but I'd say 95% chance as will be the curve. Okay, so we need to go in a few different directions here. If you have some questions from number 45, your test review, that you need help with, then I need you to tell me what those are so we can talk about them on the board. If you are good with the test review, but you haven't studied it yet, you can start studying it, meaning maybe rework the harder questions, look back at your notes that you made about the mistakes you made, see what concepts you need to worry about for the test, consider using some of those links for extra practice, etc. But if you feel like you've gotten everything you can out of the test review, you are welcome to try the FRQ number 46 and or the circuit on related rates number 47. Okay, for those of you that have test review questions, well, I guess let me print it to the screen first. Okay, it's going to be late now, but start turning it in the Google Classroom so that doesn't happen. Sorry, I need to print the test review to the board. Okay, so let me know what questions you have from the test review. If you need help with that particular question, follow along, please. And if you don't, you guys need to at least work quietly, independently, so those people can get their questions answered until I've answered everything that needs to be done. So on our test review, I've got it set up where it just tries to remind you of the different topics. So implicit was one of the two big topics, and questions 1 through 8, have you practiced that? Here's where you could get some extra practice. I think both of those take you to Khan Academy, but if you feel like you need some extra practice, then do that. Related rates is the other big topic. We spend a little more time on that because that takes a little bit more practice before it clicks. But a couple questions to give you a feel for how prepared you are for those. Lots of extra practice opportunities. In fact, here was the circuit that I went ahead and copied off for you. I didn't realize I had the solutions, but I guess that's the solutions. Should also expect a question or two on the derivative of exponential functions. Those can be the easiest, but we also talked about them for about 30 seconds total, just because it's not a hard topic. So if that's something that's holding you back, you need to let me know. And then FRQs, your test FRQ will not look like this FRQ. We do not show you, you don't get to just learn to the FRQ. There's a good chance that your FRQ will have implicit on it or related rates and some other algebra stuff. But I don't know, the more FRQs you do, the more comfortable you get with how they're asked and how to move forward and all that kind of stuff. So I think the one I printed, yeah, this one. This is the one that I printed off for you, for y'all to pick up this morning. That is optional. So here's a video of someone going over the answers if you choose to do that. Okay, so looking at the first page, the stuff on implicit differentiation, 1 through 8. Which of those can I help with? Yeah. Number 7. Okay, so please check and see if 7 is one that you would benefit from following along from. If not, work on something else for a few minutes. I need to see if I do. Okay, so for number 7, you've got to be able to do a couple things here. You have to know that this means second derivative. So you need to first worry about the first derivative. So the derivative of 5 would be 0. Actually, I know I'm going to run out of space on this one, so I'll do it over here. Derivative of 5 is 0 minus 2 times the derivative of xy. Now, I know it's tempting to take the derivative of x and then multiply the derivative of y. But if it worked that way, we wouldn't need the product rule. We have to use the product rule here. The derivative of x with y left alone plus x left alone times the derivative of y. This is what makes it implicit. I took the derivative of y with respect to a different variable, so I need a y prime. Okay, over here we've got derivative of 7x and the derivative of 3y. Once again, I took the derivative of y, so I need another y prime. You okay with that so far? Okay, so this will help me find the first derivative. Now, to solve for the first derivative, at some point you need all of the y prime stuff on one side. Maybe add this over. Maybe leave this here because it has a y prime. If it doesn't have a y prime, move it over to the other side. And of course, this isn't the most common type of equation solving, but it pretty much happens in every implicit question. If both of these have a y prime, you can factor it out and then undo times with divide. Okay, so all of that to find the first derivative, which is sometimes all that you need to do. But a question or two may ask you on the test to go to second derivative. So we wouldn't ask you to do this on every question because then the test would be too long. But before we move forward, are you okay with this being first derivative? Okay. So second derivative, I know if I take the derivative of the first derivative, I get the second derivative. To take the derivative of this, you're going to have to use quotient rule. Again, I've started to see some people, I don't know if it was people in this class or not, but start to take the derivative of the numerator and then divide it by the derivative of the denominator. If it worked that way, we would not have spent days learning the quotient rule. Have to use quotient rule. So the derivative of the top, derivative of y creates a y prime times the bottom left alone minus the derivative of the bottom times the top left alone all over the denominator squared. Okay, you okay with the product rules piece? Okay. Now, the reason why this would not give you points on an FRQ yet is because the question specifically asks you to give it in terms of x and y. I've got some x's, I've got some y's, but I also have a y prime. So this is in terms of x, y's, and y primes, which is not good enough. But the good news is I know what y prime is equal to. So I will make that substitution. I'm going to distribute this too also. I just figured I'll probably have to do it later anyway. And how I know to make this replacement, what y prime is equal to, was what we did right here. I said that the first derivative was equal to negative 2y minus 7 over 2x minus 3. Now my answer is in terms of x's and y's. So if this was an FRQ question, technically you could stop there. That is the second derivative in terms of x's and y's. But as you guys know, multiple choice, you have to practice simplifying, otherwise you'll never be able to do it. The good news is that these two will cancel, so that was kind of rigged to do that. And we could distribute this negative 2. We could combine like terms on the top. I would start to look at the answer choices because I'm starting to run out of ideas on how to simplify it. And looks like the last thing that they did was, well, if you want it to look exactly the same, they factored a 4 out of this and put these in opposite orders. And then how'd they do that? 3 minus 2x. Their denominator looks a little bit different. Okay, I gotta try to figure out what went wrong here. But when y'all did this, did you have a denominator 2x minus 3 or 3 minus 2x? Yeah, 3 minus 2x. Okay, so I must have a mistake in here somewhere. Maybe right here. That looks fine, that looks fine. I don't know. Let me look at this one in just a minute. There's some small arithmetic error in there, I think, but I mean, I guess I could try to factor a negative out of this. And then because it's squared, it doesn't matter. I think that's probably what happened, but I still want to look at it a little bit more, but I don't want to. Squaring a negative doesn't matter, so I think that will come out okay, but let me double check before I say for sure. But I can do that. I can do that later and come back. But that's the general idea. Take the derivative. It's implicit because you're taking the derivative of y with respect to x. Solve for y prime. Take the derivative of y prime to get the second derivative. If it wants it in terms of x's and y's, you need to make this substitution for y prime. So instead of saying y prime, I put what y prime was equal to, and then simplify if it's multiple choice. But I will, I'll go back and try to see what I could have done differently there in a minute. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to some others. So let's maybe take a question from page 2. So that would be 9 through 14, the couple related rate questions, and or the derivative of exponential functions. Okay, Julia?
Can you do number 9? I couldn't figure out, or like I forgot how to take the derivative when the pi is in there. I don't know, that was the part that was messing me up, because I got the formula v equals 4 over 3 pi r squared, but I couldn't remember how to take the derivative of it.
Okay, I think I know what you're asking here, and we'll get to that in a second, but it could be that, like, when we talk about 5x has a derivative of 5, pi is just a number, so pi x would have a derivative of pi. It's 5 times the derivative of x, which would be 5 times 1. This would be pi times the derivative of x, which would be pi. So I think that's what you're going for. Now, maybe if it was just a number, the derivative would be 0, just like the derivative of 5 would be 0. But we'll see if that's what it is. Okay, a spherical balloon is inflated with gas at a rate of 300 cubic centimeters per minute. So even if you don't know what type of measurement this is, you should know what it is based on the units. Cubic units are always volume. And since it's per an amount of time, that would be volume prime, V prime. Or, remember that's the same thing as dv over dt, if you'd rather write it that way. You can write it whichever way you want to, but you have to recognize both directions. We could write it either way. How fast is the radius of the balloon increasing? So that would be r prime at the instant that the radius is 70 centimeters. Okay, well, one thing about question 9 is this is a volume of a sphere, and this is one of the few formulas that you don't have to memorize. Anytime this is on your AP exam or any of our questions, we will give you the volume of a sphere. So I probably should type that on here in the future. To come up with some of these v primes and r primes, we need to take the derivative of this with respect to time. So related rates are always when you take the derivative with respect to time, or if it's a function of t, a function of time. That's how you know it's a related rate. So the derivative of v with respect to time, we could say is v prime. Over here, this is just power rule. We can bring the 3 down, leave the numbers alone, lower the power by 1, and then I just took the derivative of r with respect to time. So you need an r prime. But the same way that you just left this 4 alone because it was out front, pi is just a number too. So this is 4 pi, so this is 4 pi. I think that's what maybe you were referring to. Okay, so I know this is 300. 4 is just a number, pi is just a number. I know r is 70. And I don't know, just depending on how the answers were written, you would maybe need a calculator, maybe not. But it looks like our answer would come from 300 divided by 4 pi 70 squared. And I do want to say something about this to everybody, because yesterday in my 8A class, I saw multiple people do this, and this is going to hurt a lot if you're doing this. So this came out to be about 0.005. Okay, here's what I need you to all see. Even if you felt good about question 9, even if you did it and you got it right and you were not concerned about it, at the very end of that question, my answer came from 300 over 4 pi times 70 squared. If you type it into your calculator like that, it's not going to give you the correct answer. Now luckily, the multiple choice answers, this should not be one of the wrong answers, but you're going to be confused because you're going to check your work, everything is correct, the only thing is how you're typing it in the calculator. And what's going on here, and this is going to follow you all year until you get this straightened out, but your calculator does order of operations very strictly. So he's doing this squared first, exponents first, but then multiplication and division occur at the same time from left to right. So it's actually doing 300 divided by 4, like you intend to, but then it's multiplying by pi, and then multiplying by whatever 70 squared is. That's not what you mean. What you mean is 300 over all of this stuff. So you better put it in parentheses, or you can do alpha y equals option 1, and you can type it in like one big fraction. Because when we do one big fraction, it's implied that there's parentheses around the numerator and parentheses around the denominator. But very big difference. This is what you mean, but a lot of times you guys are typing it in like this. I really feel like you should catch that type of mistake as long as you're checking your work. I don't feel like that's something that should carry over to the test, but again, my 8A class, I caught at least 2 people that were doing that yesterday. So, I mean, they could end up missing, I don't know, 6, 7 questions like that or something if it was a calculator heavy. But okay, everybody okay with the calculator piece here? Okay, Julia, back to your question. Are you okay with how I did that?
Yeah, it's just like I feel like if I were to look at, like, when I look at that, I just see, like, two constants being multiplied. So I guess that's what's tripping me up. I don't really know.
Well, this
Like, I would have thought it would have gone to 1.
is it's the pi that's messing you up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, 4/3 is like two constants too. It's like 4 times 1/3.
Yeah.
So who cares if it's 4/3 pi? It's like you've got a 4, a 1/3, a pi. I mean, it's an extra number there, but it shouldn't make the derivative any harder.
I'm just thinking that, like, constants go to 0, so I would have thought it would have just been pi. Like,
Okay, the derivative, sure, the derivative of pi is 0. But your question wasn't what is the derivative of pi, it was the derivative of a number times a variable cubed. So if you have a number out front, just like 5x is like 5 times the derivative of x, this is like 4/3 pi times the derivative of r cubed. And it's just that those cancel. The pi is just along for the ride, but no different than the 4 is along for the ride. So, and the 3 technically, it's just that the 3 gets canceled out.
So if pi is being multiplied by something, you just leave the number of the pi alone, basically.
Yes. Okay, I don't know. I was going to jump around the pages, I guess, but I guess that doesn't really matter. So what other questions do you have from front page, second page, or the practice FRQ? Is there anything else I can help clear up with those? Bless you. Number 5. Okay, so number 5 is kind of a silly question, but it's really trying to emphasize what it means to take the derivative with respect to a different variable. Because implicit basically means when you're taking the derivative of y with respect to x, and related rates are when you're taking all kinds of derivatives of different variables with respect to t. Both of those have immediate applications. This one's just kind of silly, but it kind of helps you, hopefully helps you identify when you need the primes and when you don't. This is saying take the derivative of this with respect to s. So because it's with respect to s, the derivative of 4s would just be 4. And I just took the derivative of s with respect to s. So that's like multiplying by 1, and I don't need to keep up with that. But over here, I've got the derivative of sine something, which would be cosine something. But I just took the derivative of an r with respect to some other variable, so I need an r prime. S was with respect to s, so I don't need an s prime. R with respect to s are two different variables, so I need an r prime. Now to finish this question, it wants it in terms of s only. So instead of saying r, we need to say what r is equal to, which was given to us over here, 3s to the 4th minus 1. And instead of saying r prime, we need to do what r prime would be equal to. 12s to the 3rd and then I think they just multiplied these. Now my answer is in terms of s only, so that's what they were aiming for. But I like this question because of this, the very first part. I took the derivative of 4s, but I didn't put an s prime, and then I took the derivative of an r, but I did put an r prime. And understanding why I didn't here and why I did there is really one of the main lessons in Unit 3. Okay, was that enough? Okay, anything else from the test review? I certainly don't mind, but yeah, Julia, go.
On FRQ, I was having trouble going from like the answer B to finding like basically this is the algebra to solve for the value of k. I was having trouble doing that.
The last part you would have to have a calculator for.
Okay.
Did you try it with the calculator?
I did, and I was still struggling.
Okay, tell me what you got from part D, because I don't have that out.
I think I had -8, and then in parentheses I have 4.2 squared plus 5, and then 4.2.
Times 4.2?
Yes, in parentheses. And then I have a k, multiply that by k. Plus k to the third equals -149.
Okay, so I'm going to type this all in my calculator exactly the way it looks, except I'm going to do two things. Instead of saying k, I'm going to put x, because my calculator just deals with x a little bit better. And I'm going to add this over so that it's set equal to 0. And so you have two methods of being able to do this. I don't know which one is necessarily going to be easier, but you could either use the equation solver, or you can use a graph, and that's what I'm doing. So let me type that in real quick. Okay, so I think I typed in what you said. Again, the only switch I made was I added the 149 over. So I want to know when this stuff equals 0, and instead of putting k's, I put x's. But if I graph this, where this guy equals 0 is when y equals 0, so that would be x-intercepts. So I would say that location's the answer. You should not make any assumptions about that being a half. You also should not hit trace and just try to get close to it. You also should not go to the table and try to get close this way. Like, your table's jumping by integer values here. You have to get it within 3 decimal places. 3 decimal places is the expectation on the AP exam. So if you do second trace, calculate a 0, move the cursor to the left before you hit enter on left bound, move the cursor to the right of the x-intercept before you hit enter on right bound, hit enter to skip guess, and then it should jump straight to that point, -0.373. And that's not one that we would expect you to be able to do by hand, so you could lean on your calculator to do that. So x is about -0.373. Yeah. And I guess I shouldn't say x, I should say k, because that's what they were talking about. Equation solver could also work, but if you don't practice using that on a regular basis, I don't know that I would try that on a test. Okay. Other test review questions? Okay. Obviously, if you guys have more, I will try to help you out individually, but give me a couple minutes here so I can finish looking back at that question from earlier that I had my answer look a little bit different. Let me make sure I get that cleared up, and then I will come around and help you guys out individually. Again, make sure you feel really comfortable with the test review first. If you have extra time, the FRQ is always good practice. Even when we get to the AP exam, you guys are going to understand how the FRQs are the hardest part. Most people don't really stress about multiple choice by the end of the year, but FRQs can be tough. And just my thinking is that if you need more practice on anything, it's probably related rates, which is 47. So again, if you do at least half of that and turn it in, I'll give you the homework grade. But I will probably ask you to finish that up at some point this year. So if you have time, more practice is, of course, going to be better. So give me a few minutes to look back at that last one, and then I'll come around and try to help out some more. here's where I finished that question. What I had originally was equivalent, it just looked different, which can be frustrating because I hate for you to work a whole calculus question. You have it right and not realize it's right. But I went back and I just multiplied everything by a -1 first to make it look like this. And then I took the derivative and then that made it look like what it's supposed to. So that versus leaving it like this can make it look a little different, but at the end those two are the same. Not a satisfying answer, but
Am I taking the derivative of this one? Because when I like try to play with it, I'm like, it's getting 0.
yeah, you don't get to take the derivative of this and then take the derivative of that and then multiplication. You gotta do product. And the derivative of cosine something is negative sine something. So when you do that, the negative of the negative is plus. The derivative of sine something is cosine something, but the derivative of cosine something is negative sine something. So depending on which direction you're going, it would be the negative.
Just give you a tough there.
So you're not going this way, you're doing this one, so you didn't include that negative sign.
Also, I turned in the way the third number 41.
That's just the rate is changing, so you want R prime. Okay, so if you're not sure what this is, this can't be circumference, because circumference is just a length, and so the units wouldn't be squared. Squared units implied area. Cubic units implied volume. So I would say the area A prime is the 32.5. So, so if the circumference is 10 pi, and this is the formula for circumference, plug in 10 pi for circumference. That's going to allow you to solve for R. So R is 5. So instead of them just coming out and saying when R is 5, they're just making you work for it. If circumference is this and that's circumference, then you can solve and figure out it's when R comes up. But since they're telling you the rate of change of area, you need the area formula, take the derivative of that, plug in 5 for R, and then I think you'll be close. I don't know if that's enough to finish. But.
That's crazy. How?
Okay, so when you have the vertical line,
Maybe the X.
okay, and how do you get a slope within defined? Okay, but arithmetic-wise, how do you know? How do you get an undefined slope? It's when you try to divide by 0. So you need to set the denominator equal to 0. That's the first step to happen. Just like horizontal lines, a fraction equals 0 when the numerator equals 0. A fraction is undefined when the denominator equals 0. That's when it would be undefined, yes, which is the slope for a vertical line. Okay, I really don't want to keep these handout number 41s away from you guys in case you want to look at them to study. So give me a couple minutes to get these put in gradebook so I can pass them back if you give me your hard copy. And then I'll be back to help in some more.
Yes. Okay. Actually, yeah. Should we find for the parentheses? Good deal. there. A little bit. You good? Shoot. Are you okay?
Derivative at that point? Well, I think so. If it's a derivative,
Yeah, I haven't turned in.
like you did. You could simplify it, you know, what the derivative is equal to, and then
And
plug
it
in the
didn't turn
numbers.
in.
But really, if you just plug in the numbers right here, some of this goes to zero, so it can skip this whole step of
Did you?
trying to write that out. You got
No,
no
no,
point,
come on.
you don't really have to make it look like this unless you can.
Man, on yours, I couldn't find a couple of them. I don't know if you have them on a separate sheet or if I just missed them. But like there's 1102 over there. 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know if I see 7, 8, 9. I don't know if I see 10. No, that was the last one. You've got the first 6. So if you do those last couple before the test, you can have those kind of questions.
When I'm doing this, I'm gonna go to, like, this is not my answer first, but I'm not sure what I did wrong.
That's what I was talking about earlier with the calculator. So when you're typing it in, it does the division first, and then it's coming back and multiplying your by, and you want it to divide your by.
Thank you.
You need to find your way for those. That we should turn in on the classroom, so I'll do that, but make sure you have it to turn in on Thursday.
I feel like this is gonna be the best. Yeah. It has like a lot of something.
I think there are some extra copies of the test review. If you want extras, I just leave extras in that folder over there. All of that stuff gets trashed anyway, so you get some use out of it.
So it just goes to 1 over 1. Does it go to 1 over 1 then? Because why? This is why I go to 1 then. No, it doesn't.
Is that enough for that one question?
Yeah, I got it.
Also, I know you guys have done a handful of circuits at this point, but some of them are definitely better than others. And I feel like this related rate one is one of the better ones because some of the questions sound very similar. Like I think question 1 and 2 on it are almost the exact same question, but they just like tweak one little thing about it and it makes sure that you really understand what to do. So.
I should check that.
And again, I didn't realize I had a solution linked to the circuit, but I think it is linked on the test review. So under extra practice for related rates. Let's see if it works.
touchscreen.
Take it today. The reading was
Not
like that.
touchscreens, but like the computer stuff. No, and then like that was the most recent stuff on the computer.
For all of your
Around the box says
Oh.
So, it hasn't been able to.
It is.
I know. I didn't like it.
But when I did do it,
Is it really hard to
the
find?
touchscreen wasn't convenient.
And like, what's the thing with the speaking? Speaking, it really said it.
The teacher is very light.
And
And then that
no
will
time to think of what I wanted to say, just automatically started recording it.
I'm
So
sure
then
they
on
did.
the answer,
Yes.
you're just talking into your computer, everyone's doing it at the same time.
Everyone's doing it at the same time.
Yeah, in the lecture hall, there's like 30 minutes.
No, I think we're good. I need to try this one and do this one again.
You can, but like, yeah, it didn't really matter. Yes, or it's like I'm trying to think in English, like I say something in English. And just know. At one point I was like, please let me pass this.
For sure.
No, yeah. That's so true.
For sure he didn't. We're in a gap.
I think I can really get over
What's the energy?
On one of the questions, it was like,
Well,
explain how you communicate with other
but I did
people.
see him post something
You remember that
to
writing question? Or like on the telephone, or like how do you communicate with people? And I said, really? I said I live in the mountains and there's no reception, so I don't communicate.
I'm not in that. You got
Because I
that?
didn't know what to say.
It sounds fun.
Yeah, it was like one of the last ones on the radio section. Same. It was like how to communicate with others.
I miss the first
Maybe I
time
read
you
it.
teach
About sports.
which means I'm gonna have to do stuff outside
You
of
get like
school,
the one
but I'm
about
gonna
the
actually get
socks.
like
Maybe you didn't.
amount of hours for it. So now I might just quit because I don't want to do anything outside of school.
Okay, let's walk in. Let's it's okay.
Nobody's about to do it.
Maybe I'll do this something like this.
But like, what's the point of being in there? It's your resume, but like, who cares? Exactly. AJ doesn't need that on his resume. It's gonna make his resume look worse. So as long as we're like, AJ doesn't need that. Like, AJ wasn't even the president of the Yeah, drop it. Where are you gonna go? Honestly, dude, I wish I could do that. It's realistic. You just need the credits, that's all. And what GPA do you need, Charlie? Like, you need a yeah, 2 points. So like a C? C average? So, no, but your GPA score, it's gonna be high, it's like a 30, right? 31. So if you have a 30 band and you have like a 2.0, you're like, well, he has a 30 band, he's really smart. We gotta show you. I'm not taking you. That's crazy. It's not that high or what? What's your 17 to 30. But for tuition, for you have 30, 33, 33. And some of the 32. Super square. That's what they're taking classes. Some better score than one. English and reading at 33. And reading math at 31. And then pulling on the 5 at 30. And then science, the highest is 30. I think. I don't know. Yeah, you got one that works for you there. Hopefully you can get along 20 or harder.
Looks like you're not doing it. Okay. This is X times the time if you want. So you can't do this when you do this. You got a product.
So just about voltage.
Am I approaching this one?
Straight line?
Like actually,
Formula for you gotta do product roll here.
I did, no, it is the radius, so I did the R prime is the first and the second was the.
Oh, okay, and then you distributed the 135, gotcha. Okay. So you took the root of R
Oh, no, you're
of
right.
H alone, okay, I did. And then the root of H, okay, that sounds fine.
And then like when I'm plugging it in, I still have an H prime.
H prime and a what prime?
And a V, like the
Oh.
volume.
Okay.
And I think I'm looking for, like, which is the pile of drawings, so I think I.
So right here,
That
this looks good. It's very chargeable against stuff, and you realize what you don't have.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't have, like, you have enough that you could go and take up the information, but in this question, I think what you need is that the radius is twice the height. So then right here, instead of H, you could do,
Or 1/2 R.
The radius is twice the height, so if you doubled height, it would be equal to R. So instead of H, you can do 1/2 R,
Okay.
or instead of R, you can do 2H.
Yeah.
If you put H's though, when you take the derivative, you're gonna have H prime.
It's smart, but it could be
Already figured out
overthinking
the
it.
problem. So I would make this substitution first and then take the derivative.
If done right, it could be
Can you help us on this one? I don't know if I set it up the right way. It's circumference.
yeah.
And then if you take the derivative.
what do you think this is?
It could be hit or miss.
What's the 32.5?
The R prime.
R, okay, well prime is,
Change it.
oh, change your time, so that's per minute, that's fine. But R is radius, and that's the length. So that would be just centimeters, not centimeters squared. If it's square units, it's gonna be some sort of area.
Okay.
Cubic units is some sort of volume.
So you're trying to find.
So this is actually A prime. Okay.
You don't like
How fast is the radius changing when the circumference is in pi?
So you just like the area formula and then.
Mhm.
Cause this is the circumference. What's this?
Okay, that's true, that is circumference.
circumference.
Okay.
But
And then it gives us.
Yes.
gives you that.
At your
I
house.
don't think you know what R is yet.
That R prime.
That's
Oh, but it says you could plug this in instead of saying 2 pi r.
That's a little confused.
No.
And then, okay, that makes sense.
So it's the same thing, it's just that I think what they're expecting you to do, this is circumference, and in this question they said it's 10 pi. So you could divide both sides by 2 pi to figure out that R is 5. In the end, you ended up doing the same thing.
Okay.
That was the last.
Did I?
Uh-huh.
Because if I do like 32.5
Because this should be 2 d pi times an R. Since R is 5, it should be 10 times 5.
I actually like that.
Okay.
So you did it
But not in your house.
Okay.
just the way you substituted it.
It's different than.
Well, probably not in your house.
Did you get 3.5?
Also, pink one too.
Okay, I just did 32.5. Okay, well, that's what I did. Wait. I forgot to add the like 10.2.
The way you typed it in
We
is
should
what
play
I
again
talked
this week,
about.
if you have
The way you
Just
typed
play
it
credit
in
more,
is
honestly.
Oh, I see.
32.5 divided by 10, and then it's multiplying by 5.
I'm kind of bummed out right now.
You say you should always put parentheses on the numerator and parentheses around the
I don't want to practice.
1.04. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll practice pickleball for sure, but I'm getting sick of this.
Okay, you'll still have a little over 20 minutes, so if
Yeah.
you can see something
Locked into
you need help with, ask sooner rather than later, please.
What? That's true though, it's like 2 grams of protein. I just got 2 grams of protein and it's 2 drops. That's crazy. How many grams do you weigh? You weigh, right? Maybe a little bit more.
I need to show this one to my pre-cal class to scare them a little bit.
That scared me last year. That scares me now, actually.
It looks harder than it really is, though.
Show it to Johnny.
Teachers, pardon this brief interruption. At this time, all ninth graders are dismissed to move to the PAC for a literary event. So repeat, at this time, all ninth graders go to the PAC at this time for an event. Thank you very much.
Most of them are here, so. The slope taking derivatives and then the baseline y how do you find it gives you y1 you don't? These are actually
surface area, and this is 765. So I know that the volume is 125 meter cube, so the sizing has to be 5.
Okay.
And I got this spark where I took the derivative of it, and then I'm plugging in the things, and it's like a really big number. There's no big numbers in this.
so slope
Bring the power down, lower the power by 1. Okay.
so it's a round, so yeah. How do you? Did you watch it? Or you just sort of?
I did. 12 times 5 times 8.
Yes.
480. And none of them are that big.
So y1 equals.
Yeah, let me try it.
Just like the bottom line of the formula.
Where did you plug in 8?
So -6, but I can make it 16.
Okay, but 8 is not how fast the surface area is changing. 8 is how fast the volume is changing. So you're going to need the volume formula and the derivative of that so that you can plug in 8. Well, you're missing 2 things. 1 and 2. There you go. Well, you basically know SS5 from earlier. I agree with that. You also know that B prime is 8 from that. The other reason you should have known this wasn't surface area is because centimeters to cubic units are always more. And what you want is the rate of change of surface area. So when you plug in 5 here and 8 here, you can solve that for S prime.
Okay, 32.4.
What looks scary?
No, 842. Because it's, you're just like dividing the 300.
What is that? What is that?
Mr. Johnson, my answer's not on there.
You should be dividing this by 300 because you want to get C divided, so.
So what did you get?
107. It's not on there.
Yes, it's like two of them, and that's the third one. It's like
That's really good one. That is a good one. It wasn't accident, no. It wasn't me.
There was one more piece to that question. So you solved for what?
S prime.
Okay, and what does S prime represent?
It's a little funny.
What is that? The how fast the side is changing for the surface area
A little
change.
funny, right?
Right, so you know the answer to how fast the sides are changing, but it wants to know how fast the surface area is changing. So, out to the side, you can take the surface area formula,
That's true.
take its derivative,
There's some. There's some. Hmm?
and you needed that S prime for that.
Well, what else would we matter?
It's just because I rounded.
Yeah, I'm getting 6.4.
Yeah, it's because I rounded because it was 0.10666666.
This is what I got. This is what I got for. That's so. Is that wrong? Whoa, what do you do? What do you want to do? Okay, okay, everybody good, stress?
Take a break later, please.
Where's your brother? Where's your brother?
Okay.
So volume.
That's not the derivative. This is r squared times h. You have to do product of components. You don't get to just take the derivatives individually. Everywhere there's an x, you can put a 4.2. Everywhere there's a y, you just put 1k.
Multiply x.
Yeah, what is it? Well, they're wanting you to use the tangent line equation, which is this. So you know, this is saying that the slope at 4, -1 is 3. So
You're plus the 1 to 4 each.
Right? Or you could just do
So at the point 4, -1, you know the slope is 3. You can use that as a way to approximate. If you know what the slope is at 4, 4.2 is pretty close to that. So you can plug in 4.2 into x and then solve for y.
So visually what's happening is you got a curve. You know the slope at this instant is 3, and you're using it to approximate what the slope is at whatever, 3.4. So it's a little bit off, but that's the word to go behind.
I'm not sure where this data comes in. Where I would be putting the 1 or the 2 in.
How fast is the water level in the cup rising? It sounds like H prime. It's poured in at a rate, so that would be volume. How fast you're filling it? V prime should be the 1.
And then I saw that H prime.
basically.
That sounds like the high.
What?
Why'd you?
I think the height is 6 inches.
Let me try it on my own. I can't see what you're doing wrong.
Mr. Tillman,
Yeah.
can I leave a little early to talk to Miss Simpkins?
No.
Because
Didn't you ask me that like last week or something? I can't let you leave all the time.
I didn't ask. That was just during the advisor for recommendation. I have to talk to her.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm missing her test.
That's fine.
Today.
Just a couple minutes before.
Wait, what happened? But you were, so like, why
Yeah,
did that
I'm missing her test today for the bioliteracy test. Spanish. Yeah, so. Yeah, I'm learning.
I'm not gonna have time to help finish this one, but one part of it is draw a picture of the cone. At the start of it, they tell you the height is
6. Yeah.
and the radius is
2.
So as the water fills up, it stays at the same proportion. So R is a third of the height. And so you can substitute R for 1/3 H or H for 3R before you take the derivative, and then that should clear it up.
Yeah, real.
literally, I'm at that point too, I'm like,
Yeah.
Right here, you can
Okay.
factor
That gives me
I mean, that's not yeah.
So like factor out here. You may not see the whole count first. You gotta try something. Factor out next.
For sure. No, not.
So each factor equals 0. Here, this is
Yeah.
And if you plug in 0 credits here and here, it's only 0 credits. So that doesn't give you overtime.
Okay.
But this, you can solve for one.
Actually, I took the last one.
Plug it in here. This is your
Yes. Is this, when I do the product flow, can I like take that out and then multiply those? Okay. So then, is that looking? But I guess I'm confused for when I plug in for R, I put in 2H.
What's this?
Freaking response question.
No, I mean, where's all this coming from?
Oh, product flow?
Okay, well, if it was 1/3 pi times the stuff, and you take the derivative, it's still 1/3 pi times all of it.
Okay.
It looks like you're only tagging it to the first term, not
Okay.
the whole.
So this would be like 1/3 pi H one.
I think so.
And
You're not
then-
gonna check the rest.
But when I put in for R, it's 2H, but then there's like 2H.
Yeah, because of this relationship, you really should try to make the substitution before you take the derivative.
Okay.
Sometimes you do this and you have all that information, but having R and H and R prime and H prime is just less likely. If you change all of that stuff to R's or all that stuff to H's, then you're only gonna need an H and an H prime or an R and an R prime, so you need less information.
Which one would you change? Would you change it from R's?
It just depends on what you're trying to find and what information you want. If they give you the radius of changing, you probably need an R prime, so I'd probably change it to R's.
Okay.
But sometimes you don't know until you try.
Okay.
Okay, I had something else I wanted to share with you guys, but we're about out of time anyway, so it's not important for our test on Thursday. Of course, you guys need to give yourself some sort of reminder. Even if you feel well prepared for the test, 5 or 10 minutes of studying would still help out quite a bit. So give yourself a reminder about the test on Thursday. Make sure you turn in the test review, and make sure that if you have any late missing work, that you get that done and turn in so that you get some points back.
Yeah, last year I was like the year
Chloe, if you're leaving early, now's the time.
Okay, perfect.